All right, hello and welcome back. Brett here with clickmail.co. Okay, so in the high stakes decision making course, we did talk about the 80-20 rule or the Pareto Principle. So if you're familiar with it, we're going to talk more about the application of the 80-20 rule to pruning our life and our ministry and optimizing it for fruitfulness, because we want to live the most fruitful life. So we need to cut out the noise, cut out the things that aren't producing any fruit, and continue simply, how do I say this? We want to cut out good things and bad things, right, that produce no fruit. If there's no fruit production, you get rid of it. You want to keep only good things that also produce fruit. Why would I do a good thing when I could have, how to say this? Why would I do a good thing that produces no fruit when I could put in the same exact effort and do a good thing that produces fruit? Okay, so we want to just do good things that also produce fruit. And so we start optimizing our lives for fruitfulness. And over time, not only are you doing good things, but you're also creating growth and abundance in every area of your life. And that's not just for you. That's obviously for the people that you serve in your business or your ministry or your family, whatever it is. Okay, so coming over here, I'm going to share with you how we start looking at this. Okay, so here on the screen, this is the Pareto Principle. And the Pareto Principle, again, just brief review, says that 20% of your resources, of your investments, gets you 80% of your fruit. Okay. So if you have your time with your wife, your time with your family, your kids, your time with your business, with your ministry, and you've got, let's just say, 10 resources a day. It doesn't matter if it's time, energy, effort, finances, like whatever it is, attention, decisions. We talked about decisions in the strategic sacrifice course, the high stakes decision making course. You have 10 to give every day. 2 of those is going to get you 80% of your results. Okay, so just two gets you 80% of the results. Okay, so again, I'm not going in to all of the sort of background behind the 80-20 principle. Go watch the high stakes decision making course if you want to understand how this works and why it works and sort of how this applies to reality as God has created it. Okay, now let's imagine here that, what are we talking about? You have 5,000 in expenses every month and you only have 3,000 to give. Well, let's say this is your budget. Let's say you can spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's all you have to spend. So let's say you actually have 6 to spend and you're spending 10. Well, that's nonsense. That's crazy. You can't do that because you don't have 10. So this is what we've been talking about. So what do you need to do? Well, minimally, you need to cut these 4 expenses out. Which 4? Determine on the fruitfulness. But you need to cut these 4 out. And everybody is so hard. Oh my gosh, we couldn't cut that much out of our ministry or our business because we were going backwards. No, you're going forwards. Because why? That should be an easy cut because if you organize these properly, you know which ones are the most fruitful because you've been measuring them. It's these 2. You can actually cut all of this. You can cut out 80%. 80% you can cut from your resource drain, from your resource load, and only lose 20% of your results. So if you need to cut these 4 from budget, good, cut those 4. But also, you can cut way more than that if you're actually measuring properly. You can cut all the way down to here. And what happens then? You're left with 20% of the resources you were spending. Okay, so you were spending over 100 in our scenario where you're trying to get out of this burnout loop where you're spending more than you have, but you've cut it all the way down to 20% of what you were spending. So how much do you have free now? If you're down to just spending these 20% and your ministry or your business is creating 80% of the fruit that it was doing before, how much resources do you have left? You now have 80% free. You're operating at a surplus now. What do you do with these 80%? You just said, this is noise, this is noise, this is noise. None of this stuff is producing fruit. And now you've freed up 80% of your resources. What do? You take those 80% and you put them here. And what happens? What do you think happens when you only had 20% of your resources in these two things and you're getting 80% of the results? What do you think happens when you take the other 80% and you dump it in here? Probably that is going to blow up. It's going to skyrocket. You want to talk about how to create fruit? This is how you create fruit. You reinvest into the things that are already working. And so we have to know how to separate the noise, which is all this stuff, from the message, the fruitful stuff. Then we need to know how to order the order in which things need to be cut, and then we need to cut it. So minimally, you have to cut down to be within your budget. So let's say your budget, again, is capped here. You have to at least lose this much to be sustainable. But if you really want to grow, you actually need to do less stuff. You need to cut all this stuff too, because it's still noise. And then you take all the resources you saved and you invest them into the few fruitful things. And so this is why we see that, like, for example, the Matthew principle in Matthew 4. To those who have, more will be given. Why? Because they understand how this is a feature of reality. This isn't a miracle. God's not, I mean, I do think that God is blessing them, but through his creation, through the rules he already put in place. Secular people use the Matthew principle in economics and investing all the time. To the one who has little, even what he has will be taken to him and given to the one who has much. That's a Bible verse. Why? Because the one who has much knows how to steward. He knows how to do less things and invest the resources into fewer things, taking less of his time and effort and energy, but creating simultaneously orders of magnitude more fruit than the person who does not understand how these principles work. So this is what you need to do with your life and with your ministry in order to get out of this burnout cycle. And so in this video, this is just an actual practical application of how to assess these things in your life, how to cut, and how to reorient your resource spend to things that actually function. And don't be scared of losing stuff that is noise. This is things that people are so scared of doing, but when you really think about it and you actually look at it and you think, well, I'm going to cut 80%, I'm going to lose 20. What's the worst case scenario here? I've got a lot of free resources and I'm not really losing that much. It feels scary. It's really the best thing you can do. Especially, I mean, obviously if you're struggling with burnout. So thanks so much for being with me in this video. We're going to continue in the next video. We'll see you there. God bless.